فاعلم أنه لا إله إلا الله واستغفر لذنبك وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات والله يعلم متقلبكم ومثواكم.
أن أمته ستفترق على 73 فرقة كلها في النار إلا واحدة، وهي من كان على مثل ما عليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه. ولا يهولنك كثرة الجمع، فالحق هو الحق وإن لم يأخذ به إلا واحد.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the ever merciful. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord, creator and sustainer of all things that exist. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafi anbiya'illahi sayyidil mursaleen. And may Allah raise the rank of and grant peace to the most noble of all prophets of Allah, the chief and leader of the messengers. وَعَلَىٰ آلِهِ وَصَحْبِهِ أَجْمَعِينَ. And may He raise the rank of and grant peace to as well all of His companions and family members. أَمَّا بَعْدْ. As for what follows, then on this afternoon of the 15th day of Dhul Hijjah, in the year 1437, we come together here locally at al-Masjid al-Awwal, in the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we come together online as well, via tele-link with our brothers in Florida, through the At-Tarbiyah initiative of South Florida, Masjid Quba in Orlando, the Islamic Center of Palm Beach, and whoever has gracefully joined us this afternoon. May Allah Ta'ala grant them all success and raise their status in this life and in the next. And by the permission of Allah Ta'ala, our goal is to come together and to study the last 3 issues under the first principle, and what that entails of worship of Allah Ta'ala, the one who is the sole exclusive owner of the right to be worshipped. Those examples provided by the author of acts of worship that are only to be dedicated to Allah Ta'ala. We've gone through all of them except 3. And we now approach the remaining 3 before we enter into the second principle of the 3 intended principles of al-Usool, al-Thalaathah, the 3 fundamental principles. Of course, the text of the book has been authored by the great scholar of Islam, Shaykh al-Islaam, Muhammad ibn Abdil-Wahhaab al-Tamimi, rahimahullah. And the explanation that we come together to read from is the explanation of the great scholar, al-Allama, Muhammad ibn Saalih al-Uthaymeen, rahimahullah. And in that printed explanation, we are on page 65, beginning with the text of al-Usool al-Thalaathah, the speech of Shaykh al-Islaam, Muhammad ibn Abdil-Wahhaab, rahimahullah. وَدَلِيلُ الْإِسْتِغَاثَةِ قَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ. And the evidence for Istighaathah, seeking help in time of dire need as an act of worship, is the statement of Allah the Most High. And remember when you sought help, tastaghithun, when you were seeking the help from your Lord at a time of dire need, فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ, and He responded to you. That's from Surah Al-Anfal, the 9th verse. Allah responded by what? By sending angels to assist the believers on the battlefield. In explanation of this point, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Saalih al-Uthaymeen said, Al-Istighaathatu talabul ghawthi. It is to seek salvation or seek being saved from an imminent harm, an imminent kind of harm that will destroy you, meaning life or death situations. وَهُوَ الْإِنْقَاذُ مِنَ الشِّدَّةِ وَالْهَلَاكِ. That is to be saved, seeking salvation from a time of great burden or stress and destruction. وَهُوَ أَقْسَامٌ. And it is of different types. al-Awwal, the first type, al-Istighaathatu billahi azza wa jalla, to seek the assistance of Allah the Mighty and Majestic in a time of dire need, to seek salvation and being saved from destruction from Allah the Mighty and Majestic. وَهَذَا مِنْ أَفْضَلِ الْأَعْمَالِ وَأَكْمَلِهَا. This is from the very best and most virtuous of all deeds and from the most complete of them as acts of worship. وَهُوَ دَأْبُ الرُّسُلِ وَأَتْبَاعِهِمْ. It is the habit or the ongoing practice of the messengers and their followers. It is the da'b. It is the well-known practice of the messengers and their followers. وَدَلِيلُهُ مَا ذَكَرَهُ الشَّيْخُ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ. And the evidence for it is what the Shaykh had mentioned. إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ رَبَّكُمْ فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُرْدِفِينَ. When you sought help, when you asked to be saved by your Lord, فَاسْتَجَابَ لَكُمْ, and He answered you. أَنِّي مُمِدُّكُمْ بِأَلْفٍ مِّنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ مُرْدِفِينَ. I am extending assistance to you. I'm extending your army by 1,000 of the angels, back to back, or rank upon rank, or one after the other, in groups. وَكَانَ ذَلِكَ فِي غَزْوَةِ بَدْرٍ. And that was in the battle of Badr. What year? What year? Early in Islam or late in Islam? After Hijrah. In the Medinan period, late in the Medinan period or early? 13? 13 after the death of the Prophet ﷺ? Earlier period. Right after Hijrah. Which battle was it in terms of number 1, number 5, number 7? Number 1, the first big confrontation. Uhud was in 3, the year 3, and Badr was in 2, second year after Hijrah, in Ramadan. And Uhud was in Shawwal of the year 3, a year and a little bit later. These were the first major confrontations between the polytheists of Mecca and the believers. This verse was revealed about Badr. إِذْ تَسْتَغِيثُونَ. Allah Ta'ala reminds the believers, remember when you were in dire need and you sought my assistance. And I responded by extending your army, as we'll see the numbers here explained by the Shaykh, with 1,000 angels. حين نظر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلى المشركين. This is when the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم looked at the polytheists, their army. في ألف رجل وأصحابه 300 وبضعة عشر رجلا. And his companions were 313, 15, 300 and some number above 310. 310 and some odd number. فَدَخَلَ الْعَرِيشَ يُنَاشِدُ رَبَّهُ. So he went into his place that is like a tower, or you could say a center for planning, or you could say a place specifically for the head of the military and those he consults with at the time of battle. He went in there and he began to call upon his Lord, Azza wa Jal, the mighty and majestic, رَافِعًا يَدَيْهِ, raising his hands, مُسْتَقْبِلَ الْقِبْلَةِ, facing the Qibla, يَقُولُ اللَّهُمَّ أَنْجِزْ لِي مَا وَعَدْتَنِي. Oh Allah, bring about what you have promised me. اللهم إن تهلك هذه العصابة من أهل الإسلام لا تعبد في الأرض. Oh Allah, if you allow this small group of the people of Islam to be destroyed, then you shall not be worshipped upon earth. These are your worshippers. This is what? Istighaathah. This is facing death and annihilation. Not just isti'anah. Isti'anah, you seek Allah's assistance in everything you do. Istighaathah, the special kind, at the time of imminent destruction or possible destruction and death. وَمَا زَالَ يَسْتَغِيثُ بِرَبِّهِ رَافِعًا يَدَيْهِ. And he kept on seeking Allah's aid at this time of dire need with his hands raised, حَتَّى سَقَطَ رِدَاؤُهُ, until his upper garment fell off of him. Rida is a commonly worn garment, not just for Hajj, but it's like the Hajj garments that you know of. There are two parts. The lower one is called the izar. The upper one is called the rida. They're two basic garments that are wrapped around. They're not cut out like shirts or pants or anything. They're just garments that are wrapped. And these were very common garments of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam outside of Hajj and Umrah, just for everyday clothing. And amongst the Arabs as well, a very common form of clothing. So here he is, in battle, wearing a rida, wearing this upper garment wrap. And it has fallen down because he's raised his hands so long. These garments will sort of come apart and fall down. They won't stay on you. They're not shirts stitched to the shape of your body. They're just things wrapped around. So for a long time, if a long time goes by with you raising your hand, they will begin to fall off. And so, سَقَطَ رِدَاؤُهُ عَنْ مَنْكِبَيْهِ, the upper garment came down off of his shoulders. فَأَخَذَ أَبُو بَكْرٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ رِدَاءَهُ. So Abu Bakr came and took the rida, the upper garment, may Allah be pleased with him, فَأَلْقَاهُ عَلَى مَنْكِبَيْهِ, and put it back up on his shoulders. ثُمَّ الْتَزَمَهُ مِنْ وَرَائِهِ, and then he stood behind him. وَقَالَ, and he said, يَا نَبِي اللَّهِ كَفَاكَ مُنَاشَدَتُكَ رَبَّكَ. O Nabi Allah, O Prophet of Allah, that's sufficient. What you have asked of your Lord, what you have begged and requested at this time is sufficient. سَيُنْجِزُ لَكَ مَا وَعَدَكَ. He's going to bring about what He has promised you. فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ هَذِهِ الْآيَةَ. So then Allah revealed this verse about the Istighaathah of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That's the first kind of Istighaathah, begging Allah for salvation, for being saved at a time of imminent destruction. الثاني الاستغاثة بالأموات أو بالأحياء غير الحاضرين القادرين على الإغاثة فهذا شرك. That is, to seek refuge in the time of dire need with the dead or with the alive, with those who are alive, who are not present and capable of offering any type of assistance. فهذا شرك. This is polytheism. لأنه لا يفعله إلا من يعتقد أن لهؤلاء تصرفا خفيا في الكون. No one does this except someone who believes that such people you call upon in times of dire need, they have some ability to aid you and to assist you and to save you from the destruction you face. فَيَجْعَلُ لَهُمْ حَظًّا مِنَ الرُّبُوبِيَّةِ. So the one who calls upon them in times of dire need, he sort of assigns to these that he calls upon a level of lordship that is due to Allah Ta'ala alone. قال Allah Ta'ala, Allah the Most High has said, أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ, or the one who responds to the one in need when he calls upon him. وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ. And he removes the evil, the hardships, and he makes you generations after generations upon earth. أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ. Could there be a deity along with Allah? قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Little is the reflection that you offer. From Surah An-Naml, the 62nd verse. And what's amazing is traditionally, even with the polytheists of Mecca, they would make isti'anah with their deities besides Allah. But Istighaathah would be with Allah. When they face death, when they're at sea and their ship is about to be overturned, no one that they would call upon besides Allah would be given any attention at this time. They would call upon Allah mukhlisina lahuddin, making their dua for Allah only at that time. At that time only. Then, when they reach salvation and Allah answers their dua and saves them, then they begin taking partners with Allah after that. So they would call out to Allah in times of dire need. And in general, Christians, atheists even, people who claim to have no religion at all, when they're in an elevator and the elevator is shaking or something and they feel that they may die, they're on an airplane and the airplane hits heavy turbulence and they feel like maybe this airplane is going to fall out of the sky, you find their hearts and even their tongues turning to their sole creator, asking for assistance at that time. Even today, with people who say, I don't believe in anything I can't see and all of that. You find them still. They have a fitrah that's buried under all of that garbage that comes out. They have an innate need and a want to turn to their creator, and it pops out, it comes through all that filth at a time when they need it most, when they are facing a life or death situation. You find an atheist saying things like, oh God, or something like this, indicating there's some recognition at this time. I mention that as being strange because with the Quburiyun today, the grave fanatics, they are more severe in their shirk in many ways than the earliest of polytheists who fought against the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. While the gravesite fanatics claim to be Muslims, strange, the polytheists of old, they knew that the generality of their calling upon other than Allah was incompatible with La ilaha illallah, and that's why they fought against the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's one angle of them being better than today's polytheists, closer to actually understanding the message of Islam. Another angle that is relative to what we're studying right here is that when they confronted a life or death situation, they would call upon Allah alone. But the gravesite fanatics of today, the Quburiyun, they become enhanced and augmented in their polytheism. And they insist on calling upon the graves in times of dire need. Remember the old polytheists who waged war against the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would call upon Allah alone in times of dire need. Today's polytheists who ascribe to Islam do not do that. They continue in acts of shirk, calling upon their dead, their saints, those besides Allah who they seek for assistance, especially, not only just at the time of dire need, but especially at the time of dire need. Some of them would say, when all of the affairs are chaotic, battle and all of that, you're invaded by an enemy force and all of that, the way to salvation is get to those graveyards. And of course, the way to salvation, as exemplified by our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is to raise those hands diligently to Allah alone. Yet these people who claim to be Muslims, they turn their hearts, they turn their faces, they turn their tongues, they turn everything towards the graves. And they even invite the others to do that. If we can all get to the graves and diligently seek help from our saints, then we can be saved. And the shaitan has a way of making them feel they're upon the right path. And that is that many of their villages would be invaded throughout history. And when the invading armies found that these so-called Muslims rush to the graveyard when we invade them, and when we begin killing them and slaughtering them, we leave them. Because they're not on their religion. We leave them. And so they wouldn't be slaughtered. Because why? The people say, so long as they're in the graveyard with this kind of fanaticism and this kind of attachment to graves, and they're not upon any deen that is worth confronting. They're just saint worshippers and all of that, and they're not the people of Tawheed that are a threat to us. They would leave them, and the shaitan would inspire them with this kind of stance, and then they would think that our rushing to the graves was the source of our salvation. Look at the istidraj, look at how they're ensnared level by the shaitan into shirk, and then thinking that it's shirk that saved them. Rather, it's shirk that put them in the hellfire forever, and it's shirk that extended their terrible, horrible life in this world and extended it into a longer life of disobedience and rebellion against the order of Allah Ta'ala, and an existence upon polytheism, which is the worst kind of existence. Yet they think they've been saved. Wallahu al-musta'an. Ath-Thalaathah. The third kind of istighathah is al-Istighaathah bil-ahya'i al-alimin al-qadirina ala al-ighathah. To seek assistance in times of dire need from those who know. Al-alimin means those who know about you calling on them, meaning those who can hear you, those who are present and they can hear you. And they're qadirin, and they have the ability of offering some assistance. فَهَذَا جَائِزٌ. This is permissible. كَالْإِسْتِغَاثَةِ. There's lots of hamzas here, just like last week, written in the book that should not be written, or to be more precise, hamzatu qata is written when it should be hamzatu wasal in the word al-istighatha a number of times. كَالْإِسْتِعَانَةِ بِهِمْ. Like, similar to when you seek their assistance in a general way, asking for help from another person. قال الله تعالى في قصة موسى. Allah the Most High said about the story of Moses, فَاسْتَغَاثَهُ الَّذِي مِنْ شِيعَتِهِ عَلَى الَّذِي مِنْ عَدُوِّهِ فَوَكَزَهُ مُوسَى فَقَضَى عَلَيْهِ. The one from his group sought his assistance. Meaning the one from Musa's group sought Musa's assistance in a confrontation. against the one who is from the opposing people. فَوَكَزَهُ مُوسَى. So Musa struck him, punched him, فَقَضَى عَلَيْهِ, and did away with him. Meaning he died from that strike. This was the taking of a life of Musa, as he excused himself from later and repented to Allah Ta'ala from. That's from Surah Al-Qasas, the 15th verse. The point of the ayah that's used here is فَاسْتَغَاثَهُ الَّذِي مِنْ شِيعَتِهِ. Musa was sought for istighatha, meaning his help was sought to resolve a conflict, and he intervened. That's istighatha. And that was at a time when the person was fearing the loss of his life or some kind of harm. الرابع, the fourth kind of istighatha, al-istighathatu bihayyin ghayri qadirin min ghayri an yu'taqada anna lahu quwwatan khafiyatan mithla an yastaghitha al-ghariqu birajulin mashlul. It is to seek help in a time of dire need from a person who's unable, without the belief that he has some sublime hidden powers. The example, مثل أن يستغيث الغريق برجل مشلول, like a man drowning who calls for the help of a paralyzed man. So he calls for the help of a man who cannot move. فهذا لغو, this is frivolity or useless. وسخرية, and it could be a mockery. بمن استغاث به, a mockery of the one you're asking for help. If you ask for help from a paraplegic, you're mocking him and making fun of him. فَيُمْنَعُ مِنْهُ لِهَذِهِ الْعِلَّةِ. So this is not allowed because of this reason. That what? It's a mockery of someone. When you ask someone who is incapable of doing something, obviously, to help you with something, then you're mocking him. وَلِعِلَّةٍ أُخْرَى وَهِيَ الْغَرِيقُ. And for another reason connected to the actual one who's drowning, رُبَّمَا اغْتَرَّ بِذَلِكَ غَيْرُهُ. Maybe someone would see this and become influenced by him asking help from a paraplegic person. فَتَوَهَّمَ أَنَّ لِهَذَا الْمَشْلُولِ قُوَّةً خَفِيَّةً يُنْقِذُ بِهَا مِنَ الشِّدَّةِ. And he might assume that this paraplegic or this paralyzed person has some hidden powers that he could extend to someone in a time of need. And this fourth one is a bit of an abstract idea, as it's not very imaginable that a person who's drowning would be mocking someone. It's kind of difficult to imagine the reality of that. A man drowning, and he seeks the assistance of a paraplegic in order to mock the paraplegic as he drowns. Well, the point is, though, that here is someone seeking help, like isti'anah, like generally seeking help, from someone who's incapable, but he doesn't intend through that this person has some sublime hidden way of helping me. He just is either heedless or he is trying to mock the person or something like that, so it is impermissible from those angles. That's al-Istighathah. The second issue today on page 66 is al-Dhabhu, slaughtering for the sake of Allah Ta'ala as an act of worship. Because of our time, I'll have to postpone the last two issues, insha'Allah Ta'ala, for our next meeting. That is next Saturday, insha'Allah Ta'ala. With that, I'll end sending salah and salam upon the finest of creation, Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. If our brothers in Florida have a correction of an error that was made or a question on the topic, we can entertain it at this time, insha'Allah Ta'ala.
Yeah, I'd like to know how can we distinguish between isti'anah and istighaathah?
Barakallahu feek. The difference between isti'anah and istighatha is that isti'anah is general, any type of assistance sought, whether it's at a time of dire need, whether it's a big act of assistance, whether it's financial, physical, moral support, anything like that. All of that, when you request assistance, that is isti'anah. Istighatha is a special kind of isti'anah. So it's from the generalities of isti'anah. And that is when you are dying, when you are confronting imminent harm and destruction, when you feel this may be your last day, this may be your last stand, at this time you seek the assistance of someone. That's istighatha. to repel or to be saved from imminent harm. So every kind of istighatha is isti'ana. But not every isti'ana is istighatha. For example, let me ask you, brothers, asking someone to pick up some milk for you from the store, is that isti'ana? Naam? Is that istighatha? It's just isti'ana, not istighatha, right? If you're starving, you have nothing to eat and nothing to drink, and death is close, and you ask someone to bring you some food because you have absolutely nothing to eat, is this isti'ana? It's istighatha. That part of your answer is correct. But your negation of this being isti'ana needs reviewed. Remember, every istighatha is isti'ana. Isti'ana, seeking help. So when you've asked someone at the time of near starvation to provide you with food and to save you from famine, it's isti'ana. You're asking for help. Moreover, it's istighatha because your circumstances are dire. You may die or become seriously ill or face any number of harms. Barakallahu feek. That which is referred to by the Shaykh of the raising of the hands of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the begging for assistance, just as 300 and some Sahabi were about to meet 1,000 of the enemy, and they were a small number of believers fearing that they may perish in battle. At this time, is this isti'ana or istighatha? Both. Ahsan. It is seeking help, and moreover, it is a very specific kind of seeking help. It is istighatha. It is seeking help in the face of calamity and potential loss of life or health and so on. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. وَفِيكُمْ بَارَكَ اللَّهُ. May Allah Ta'ala bless you, brothers, in your program. May Allah make it beneficial for you. May Allah Ta'ala allow it to reach open hearts. And may Allah Ta'ala allow it to be something that all of you draw near to Him Azza wa Jal through. And Allah Ta'ala is the one who grants success.
In the American culture, the figure of speech, "Oh Jesus," or "Oh Lord," is commonly used out of ignorance by many of the people. For the Muslims who grew up in other religious, beliefs, does this have an effect on them?
Barakallahu feek. Your question is about figures of speech, like when a person is raised in the West and he says, "Oh Jesus," or other statements that when analyzed are calling upon other than Allah. What's the ruling on the one who says them? The one who says, "Oh Jesus," and he's calling upon other than Allah, like the one who says, "Oh Muhammad," or "Oh Nuh," or "Oh Musa," or any one of the prophets or angels, or "Oh Jibreel," or anything, he's committing an act of shirk. Shirk akbar, because he's calling upon other than Allah Ta'ala. وَأَنَّ الْمَسَاجِدَ لِلَّهِ فَلَا تَدْعُوا مَعَ اللَّهِ أَحَدًا. And verily the places of prostration, as well as the body parts of prostration, they are for Allah, so do not call upon anyone besides Allah. When it comes to figures of speech that are not intended, the scholars classify these matters, which are, when looked at the wordings of them, polytheism, calling upon other than Allah, taking an oath in other than Allah's name, and so on. And this is called shirkun asghar, the lesser kind of shirk, dhari'atun ila shirk al-akbar. It's something that leads you into major shirk. Leftover jahiliyyah, or incorrect understandings that are not intended in one's speech. And they were found, these kinds of statements were found on the tongues of the companions as they entered into Islam and they left their jahiliyyah behind them. And we've heard of what is in the Sahihain of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, yahlifu bi abihi, swearing by his father, meaning he had a leftover custom from jahiliyyah that he would swear by his father. And he was now a Muslim. And when the Prophet ﷺ heard him doing so, he said, "Ala inna Allah azza wa jalla yanhaakum an tahlifu bi abaikum." Verily Allah, He forbids you from swearing by your fathers. فَمَنْ كَانَ حَالِفًا فَلْيَحْلِفْ بِاللَّهِ. So whoever is going to take an oath in someone's name, let him take an oath in the name of Allah. أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ, or let him remain silent. Along with the clarity of his statement sallallahu alayhi wasallam, مَنْ حَلَفَ بِغَيْرِ اللَّهِ فَقَدْ أَشْرَكَ. Whoever takes an oath in the name of other than Allah has committed shirk. That hadith is also from Ibn Umar, both hadith from Ibn Umar, the latter one from the Sunan of Abi Dawud and At-Tirmidhi. These two narrations together show us that number one, it's polytheism, it's shirk, to take an oath in the name of someone else. Secondly, as the scholars say, if no exoneration or exaltation is intended, to exalt someone as Allah should be exalted alone, then that is lesser shirk. It doesn't nullify your religion. If you intend to honor that individual by taking the oath in his name, as Allah is honored with this act of worship, then this is shirkun akbar, major shirk. We know about Umar ibn al-Khattab that he was worshipping Allah Ta'ala alone at this time. And so what happened with him was a habit from the habits of Jahiliyyah that remained with him, and the Prophet ﷺ responded to it, identifying it as a violation, and he did not request Umar to enter back into al-Islam. So the scholars say from these kinds of things, it was not an act of shirk akbar, rather it is like what you are saying and what you are describing, a habit on the tongue that is not intended. A habit on the tongue that is not intended. Laghu, speech that is not intended to have any benefit. And it comes in a number of narrations that even the Prophet ﷺ used speech that when you look at the explanation of that speech, you'll find that many of the scholars said with certain phrases, the wording is not intended, it's just a phrase of ta'ajjub. It's a phrase of being astonished. Like when he said to Mu'adh, when Mu'adh said, أَنَحْنُ مُحَاسَبُونَ بِمَا نَتَكَلَّمُ بِهِ. Ya Rasulullah, we're going to be accountable for what we say. The Prophet ﷺ said, ثَقِلَتْكَ أُمُّكَ يَا مُعَاذ. May your mother lose you. And so the scholars of hadith, they say in explanation of this hadith, this is not a dua against Mu'adh. Rather, it is a statement of astonishment and not intended to be a supplication. And in the book of Allah Ta'ala, there's an indication that you could even say, Wallahi, something, and you don't intend an oath. What is that? The ayah, La yu'akhidhukum Allahu bil-laghwi fi aymanikum. Allah does not hold you accountable for the laghu, for the unintended speech in your oaths that you take. You say, Wallahi, I'm not going to Florida. Wallahi, I'm not going to Florida. Is this now a binding oath that you intend to never go to Florida, and it's a vow and it's a promise in the name of Allah? Or is this just something about your plans for next week? Wallahi, I'm not going to Florida. You intend here, just I'm not going to Florida. No qasam, no oath being taken, no emphasis here, but just what's called yameenul laghu, frivolity or empty, unintended speech. So there is this kind of speech that is unintended. If the speech is of a phrase of polytheism, like, oh Jesus, then this is shirk. If it is intended and you are calling upon Jesus for help, then this is shirk akbar, it nullifies your religion. If it is not intended and it's a leftover habit from Jahiliyyah, then it resembles the swearing of some of the companions by their fathers. And the Prophet ﷺ did not interact with them as one interacts with someone who has left the religion of Islam. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Good companionship is always a key in countering these kinds of things. If you have someone who has a habit left over from Jahiliyyah, and he says, oh Jesus, what is this? Oh Jesus, I can't believe this. Oh Jesus this, and oh Jesus that. Then with Muslims around him, they remind him and they say what? Ya Allah. Say, Ya Allah, replace this oh Jesus thing, because you were a Christian and you were influenced by Christian culture and you continue to be influenced by Christian culture. Replace this thing that you do not intend anymore, because you are a worshipper of Allah alone. It's befitting that it is upon your tongue. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Musta'an, Allahul Musta'an, instead of, oh Jesus, Allahul Musta'an. Allah is the one sought for aid when you are shocked, when you are overwhelmed by something. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Verily we are the property of Allah, and to Him we shall return. Calling upon Allah, Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar, at times of excitement, at times of shock, at times of dismay, at times of disappointment. The dhikr of Allah is upon your tongue, and not, oh Jesus, and these habits left over from Jahiliyyah. So work to remove that, and surround yourself with people who can help you remove that, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. وجزاكم. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. For example, right now, Shaykh Sadiq, you're doing isti'anah, right now, aren't you? How is he doing isti'anah, Shaykh? You're asking for help understanding an issue, right? Tasta'inu bi. You're asking for my assistance in a matter. Are you facing imminent harm, and if you don't get this answer, you're going to die? No. So it's not Istighaathah. But it's just a general isti'anah. You're asking for help understanding a matter. If you ask for someone to get your shoes, it would be isti'anah. If you ask for someone to take you somewhere, isti'anah, seeking assistance. It's permissible. Istighatha is when you're about to die. You're in the streets here, in the ghetto, and some punk pulls up to you and pulls a gun out on you. Now you're facing a serious situation here. When you see someone that you can get help from and you call for their help in this situation, that's Istighatha. Yeah, that's Istighatha. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. And every Istighatha is isti'anah. You're still asking for assistance. When you see someone who might be able to help you and you wave for their assistance or something, Istighatha. You're facing possible death here. Right? It's also isti'anah from the generality of seeking assistance, but it's a special kind of seeking assistance at a time of, imminent harm. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. وجزاكم وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.